Hi, my name is Andrea, and today the main claim that I will be arguing is that physician-assisted suicide has a positive effect on the clinically ill. For those of you who don't know, assisted suicide is when a patient with a terminal illness or disease is given lethal drugs by their doctor so they can pass in peace. As of now, it's only legal in California, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and Vermont by state law, and it's legal in Montana via court ruling. So my two supporting claims are that assisted suicide ends the suffering of many ill patients, and that it lessens the cost of medical care. Going back to my first point, that it ends the suffering of many ill patients. Oftentimes, these patients have been in there for a long period of time, and having this option would cut it short for them if they desire to do that. And it's the patient's choice, not the doctor's. It's not like the doctors are saying, we're going to give you this if you're going to die. According to an article in the New York Times written by Paula Spann, a woman by the name of Judith Catherine Dunning was waiting for legislation in California to make the practice of physician-assisted suicide legal. She had brain cancer, and it was progressing fairly quickly despite all the treatments that she was getting, and at the age of 68, she pretty much slept all day, and she needed help with daily tasks that a human shouldn't usually need help doing. She was an oral historian in Berkeley, California, and she was losing her ability to speak, and in the article she mentioned that not being able to speak almost gave her not a purpose to live, and she had already completed all the important things she wanted to do in her life. And even before the End of Life Option Act became law in late 2015, I think it was October, she recorded a video of herself saying how she wanted to fasten her death, and she made it so she would not be discouraged later on and remember why she wanted to do it in the first place. It's also similar, I feel, to taking someone off life support, but I feel if physician-assisted suicide is legal, it's the patient making that decision, not a loved one or the doctors. And you could voluntarily stop your treatments and stop eating or drinking as another option, but why would you want to starve yourself? And so moving on to my second one, that it lessens the cost of medical care. This would save money for the family, and I feel oftentimes patients find it a burden to have their families continue to pay for their hospital bills. And drugs for assisted suicide are less expensive than the cost of medical care. According to the deathwithdignity.org, the costs vary based on availability and the medication type, but it usually ranges between $400 and $5,000, and I know it's a lot, but it's way cheaper than if you were to continue paying for your medical bills. And in Washington in 2013, about 175 were given the prescription, and about 155 died from the prescription. And in 2015 in Oregon, 218 chose the option of physician-assisted suicide, and 132 died from the medication. And so, you're probably wondering, why is there such a big gap? And it's because people are given the option to change their mind before they take it, which leads me to another piece of evidence from Oregon's Death with Dignity website, which is that there's a lengthy list of requirements you have to be eligible for, and that is that you have to be an adult, which means 18 years or older, and you have to be a resident of the 5 states where it is legal. You have to be diagnosed with a terminal illness that will lead to death in 6 months or less, and you have to be mentally competent, so you have to be able to communicate with your doctor, your family, your loved ones, and you have to be aware of the healthcare decision that you're making. You also have to give 2 oral requests to your doctor, and they have to be 15 days apart, so you aren't just trying to rush it, and 1 written request. So I feel physician-assisted suicide should be an option for someone. I'm not saying everyone should do it, but I feel if you're terminally ill, I feel you should have that option to end your life if you desire to. Thank you.
All right, the propositions identified at the beginning, and that was pretty clear, but at the end of the speech it kind of shifts into a policy claim, so you want to be careful about that. Come back to the argument that says that it provides an important clinical benefit for these folks. Don't argue that we should be doing it, because that's, like we said, a policy claim. The preview is fine. The subject, Gesundheit, is controversial to some degree because of the widespread absence of these policies and the presence of them only in the 5 states that you mentioned. So I guess that suggests some controversy. And I think there are other issues that are involved, but they are primarily not factual disputes, but rather moral issues that concern this question. The body of the speech is organized into 2 parts. That's fine. The suffering issue, I think you've got an example of this woman who's had the brain cancer, and she suffered because she lost her ability to speak, and she's an oral historian, so she's suffering, so there's no way to relieve this. I think your argument here is that her suffering is mental in nature as opposed to physical pain that's going through, and therefore there's not anything that you could do for it because it can't be treated by opiates, for instance. That's not going to relieve the kind of suffering that she's going through. She's got this other kind of mental issue that's happening. I think you needed to make that claim a little bit more clearly, that there are other kinds of suffering that go along with these terminal illnesses that are not just about pain-based things. I think there is a good argument to be made about pain-based issues also, but that never gets developed in this particular point. On the second point about lessening the costs, I think there's an argument that kind of similar here, that the patients have some mental suffering because they believe that they're going to be leaving an economic burden on their family or some problem that's going on with that. Mostly it's hypothetical that you're presenting. I have no doubt that giving somebody enough medication for them to end their life is relatively cheap as opposed to managing their pain for 6 months, or even treating and giving somebody assistance during the last few months of their life. I mean, it's a heck of a lot cheaper to give somebody a pill than it is to hire somebody to come in and help a person live for 6 months. But that gets into some other issues that would be problematic. For example, if this was a policy claim, and certainly if there was a value claim being involved, I would say that there would be big red flags on this particular point. But since it's a claim of fact, it's pretty straightforward when it comes to cost issues. But I still think there's a better argument to be made here than the one that you've made, which seems really minimal. All right, thank you.